Hey, you're about to watch a really cool interview I had with Jay Kristoff at his signing when he came through town. Turns out that our audio was a little bit wonky on this one. It's still listenable, it's still fine, but we wanted to warn you. Yes, we know, unfortunately, we didn't get the best audio, but I think you'll still enjoy the interview. So here you go. Have a good time.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming. It's amazing. I tell this story before every signing, so I apologize if you've heard it before, but you may not know it to look at me, but I was once in a band. And if you've ever been in a band, there comes a point in every band's life where your friends lose interest and the novelty wears off and you have to start making a name for yourself, and you inevitably show up to an empty room. You play for your girlfriends and the disinterested barman who just wants you off the stage so he can go home. And the fear of showing up to that empty room never, ever goes away. So walking out into a room like this tonight, I just want to say, it's amazing to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you have fun tonight. Before we kick off, could we please give a massive round of applause to this guy right here? I promised Brandon that I was only going to fangirl at him for a little bit, so this is the bit. But Brandon and I met at a festival in Spain like 3 months ago. I'd never seen him before. You know, obviously I was aware of his work, but we'd never seen each other face to face. And he was a very busy man. I'm not sure if you saw footage of that festival, but he took the time to kind of talk to all of us. He gave me his email address. He said, if there's anything you need, man, just reach out and let me know. And I found out that I was coming out here to tour the United States. I sent him an email saying, we're thinking of swinging through Salt Lake City. Do you think you could spare the night? Not even expecting an email back. And within 24 hours, he wrote back and said, yeah, we'd be happy to help you. I don't know if you guys get it, but it costs this guy to be here tonight. He could be working on any one of his 100-book projects. He could be playing Dungeons and Dragons in his secret Dungeons and Dragons lair. He could be hanging out with his wife and kids, and instead he has chosen to be here with us tonight. So thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Jay, but this isn't supposed to actually be about me.
No,
It's your book launch.
I know. It needed to be said, and now it's said, and now we're going to be cool.
Now we're gonna be cool. So I got questions for you.
All right.
I'm gonna ask you some stuff. Question number one. We'll start with a slightly serious one. I first read your work with Illuminate,
Right.
like a lot of people did back in the day. And now having read your contemporary work, my question is, did you intentionally decide that you needed to traumatize all the young people who had grown up reading your YA books and say, welcome to adulthood, kids?
How many of you started reading my stuff with Illuminate?
Okay.
Wow, a lot of you. Okay, well, I'm sorry for the impact that I had upon your burgeoning adulthood. No, it kind of made sense to me that, you know, I started writing YA, and the thing they don't tell you when you start writing YA, or they don't point out to you at least, is that teenagers get older as time moves along. And by the time your second series starts, even if you're pumping out a book once a year, the 15-year-old who started reading your books is now 19 years old. And I don't know the person you were when you were 15 and the person you were when you were 19. They're very, very different people. So I figured it might be a good idea to age up my work as I rolled along and bring a bunch of you all with me. So I'm glad that you started there, and I'm glad you're still here tonight.
All right, silly one. Australian food. Best and worst Australian food. I have to see if you're part of the conspiracy or not. Best and worst American food.
Wow. My wife is here, so I'm going to say the best Australian food is my wife's lasagna.
Okay. Good choice, very safe.
Yeah, very safe.
Excellent, well done.
Worst Australian food, my father's barbecue. He can't cook a steak to save his life. I'm sorry, Dad, if you watch this. I've been keeping it a secret from you for 50 years, but no.
When I was there, they did feed me kangaroo.
Oh yeah, did you like it?
I thought it was No.
Yeah.
I was having trouble imagining anyone actually liking it. It wasn't terrible, but it was not something that I'm like, wow, I want to go out and have another, wallaby steak.
Yeah, but also you guys get raised to think that kangaroos are cute and fluffy. It depends on the region of Australia you live in. They're actually a bit of a pest, so we view them kind of differently. But yeah, I imagine they have more of a human face than say a cow. So it would, yeah. But they just taste odd. They're
Mhm.
not great. They're not bad. They're just
Yeah,
strange.
yeah, they
Have you
are.
eaten crocodile?
I have had crocodile.
What did you think of
I
that?
actually liked
It's
crocodile.
better, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I would eat crocodile over kangaroo. Now, let's see if you're part of the conspiracy or not, because the first Australian ever knew. You're going to know what he did to me. You can guess.
I know what he did to you.
Yep, what he did to me. He said we have this wonderful thing in Australia.
Well, they're not wonderful. They're terrifying.
It's called Vegemite.
Oh,
Yep, this one.
right.
Yep.
I was thinking of a different thing. I'll tell you
No?
about it in a
Okay,
second.
you'll have to tell me that. He said it's wonderful. It's like peanut butter,
Yeah.
except Australian peanut butter, and he put it on and he slathered it on.
And killed you.
And yeah, and then I took a bite because I was a good friend. And he was not.
You realize he was not a good friend. No. It's an acquired taste. You usually get brought up with it, and you should start small. Like if your friend, quote unquote, puts it on like peanut butter, he is not your friend. That man wants you dead.
See, I think it only exists to prank outsiders. I think it's a conspiracy. None of you actually eat it. You're like, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with this crusty, gross stuff that's like on the bottom of the pans after we cook something. And when the Yanks come over, we're going to be like, oh, yeah, we love this stuff. And then, yeah.
I actually do love it. I eat it all the time. But we do have a thing. I'm probably breaking like Australian custom by telling you all this, but we do have a national prank, which is what I thought you were talking about. It's called a drop bear. Have you guys heard of drop bears? Right, okay. It is an actual national prank. So whenever we have someone come internationally, they will tell you, don't go out after dark because the drop bears will get you. And if some random stranger who is also Australian is walking by at that particular time, we are culturally conditioned to drop in and say, oh yeah, my uncle got killed by a drop bear. And we will tell you crazy shit like you have to put Vegemite behind your ears because they're repelled by the smell of Vegemite. You can't go out there with shoes. So we have these Americans wandering around in the dark barefoot with Vegemite behind their ears, laughing at them from the warmth of the interior of the cabin that we're staying in. So yeah, sorry, Australia, I let the cat out of the bag, but if your friends tell you beware the drop bears, we're just taking the piss.
See, he just wants you to get eaten. He's trying to pretend it's
It
a
is.
conspiracy.
It's a
Emily
double bluff.
held a drop bear when she was
Right.
there, my wife. She held a drop bear. It had recently feasted on a different tourist, so it was in that kind of,
Sated.
yeah,
no.
that's when you usually see them, they're very calm. That's because they only let you see them after they've eaten somebody.
Correct. If you Google an image, if you Google your phone, drop bear on your phone, you will see.
Yeah, red eyes, fangs,
Bloody maw,
Mm-hmm.
razor claws.
I'm gonna go with best Australian food being Tim Tams.
Oh yeah, we'll send you some.
Yeah, I really like me a Tim Tam, and I did do the Tim Tam Slam. I learned how to do this. You can look up this online. It was quite tasty.
Yeah, it's yummy. I was talking to Amanda, my wife, before we came out. We're gonna send you and the team a box of Tim Tams when we get back to
Okay.
Australia. So yeah,
I
it's a
love
date.
me some Tim Tams.
All right.
All right, we won't make you do American food because unless you really feel like it.
Favorite American food?
Yeah.
I mean, New York pizza is pretty great.
Ooh, putting a stake in the ground, right? Or,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the worst American food is Chicago pizza.
Oh, you didn't just go there. You know.
No, I'm not going to Chicago this
Yeah,
trip, so I feel like I'm safe.
All right, serious question. So, of your work that I've read, I would say a defining feature is careful and calculated subversion of trope. And I know that you've said about this series that you wanted to make vampires scary again. Is that what you said? What led you to that decision? I can tell you I feel they are scary. So I feel like you achieved your goal. How has the reception been? How are you feeling about it now coming to the conclusion of the series?
I mean, you know what it's like to finish a series. It's bittersweet. It's kind of, I likened it to the last day of high school. Like you're with these people every day, every day, every day for years, and then it reaches a point where you know you're just never going to see them again. Even if you bump into them in a cafe, you're not the same. It's not the same relationship. So it's sad, but, and I know you're supposed to say this when you're touring on the new thing, but this is genuinely the best book that I've ever written. Vampire had that crown until recently, but I had a weird experience. We were talking about it before. After the Dam tour last year, I went to a city called Toledo, which is in Spain. It's this beautiful old medieval walled fortress city. And I lived there for a month and just smashed words every day. And I would write in the morning, I would go for a walk on the walls at lunchtime, and then I would write again in the evening. And about 2 weeks into that trip, the only way I can describe it was like an idea just fell out of the sky and hit me in the head. I had no idea that this twist was coming. I hadn't anticipated it at all. It kind of came totally out of left field, and it was kind of scary because it changed the direction I thought the book was going to head. But I thought it was cool enough to explore. I went back to the flat and wrote it kind of for the next 2 or 3 days. And when I got to the end of that scene, I knew that it was perfect. It was, I don't know, like it was like a bolt out of the blue. But from that point on, the whole book was like riding a bike downhill. I've never had it happen before. It was like the book was almost writing itself, which kind of told me that that was the right decision to make. But you will know it when it happens. It's at the end of part 3. There will be no mistaking when it happens because the people who have read it so far send me pictures of them ugly crying when it happens. So you'll know when you get there. But yeah, it genuinely made it the coolest experience. So yeah, I mean, the reception's been great. I mean, I've never shown up to a church full of people in Salt Lake City before, so I'm obviously doing something right. The last time I came here, the bookstore was much smaller. So yeah, it's been cool. The wonderful thing about vampires is they're a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people. And there's been a bunch of great writers over the years who have taken them in different directions. When I was a kid, you know, I grew up reading Dracula and Salem's Lot and watching Fright Night and The Lost Boys and Near Dark. Like vampires were only monsters. They were an enemy to be destroyed. And then great writers kind of took that idea and made them into tragic anti-heroes and romantic love interests. There's nothing wrong with any of that. People hack on Twilight and make fun of it, but anyone who's working in spec fic for a living right now owes Stephanie Meyer an enormous debt of gratitude. She brought a generation of readers to reading. They showed up for Twilight, but they stuck around for Empire. They stuck around for your books. So yeah, they've been a bunch of different things over the years, but I wanted to bring them back to the monster under the bed. The really interesting thing to me about them is the notion of immortality. Like, on the surface, the idea of living forever is a really compelling one. There are very few people, if they were offered eternal life, wouldn't jump at the chance. But as soon as you scratch the surface, you realize immortality is a kind of hell, particularly in this world where you can't choose the people you turn. Sometimes you bite them and they turn into vampires. Sometimes you bite them and you just stay dead. So it's not that you can choose companions to come with you forever. And everyone you know and everyone you love and everywhere you've been, the cities you grow up in, the language that you speak, it all goes away and you stay the same forever. Like, that's a really cool and scary thought. And that's kind of underpins the vampires in this book, the notion that on a long enough timeline, everything erodes, except these creatures that are just left perpetually alone. So yeah, that's the really horrific thing about me. It's not the monstrous nature of them. It's not the draining blood. It's not the supernatural powers. It's the idea, the concept of forever as a terrifying notion. That's kind of what I'm trying to explore in the book. So it's a little more meta in the horror sense, but that is the really interesting thing to me about them. And Anne Rice was like a huge influence on the book. She was the first writer that I read who kind of awakened me to the notion that maybe the idea of eternity isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
It's awesome. Good answer, man.
That was a long one,
It's like
too.
you're
It's like I've thought about this a little bit.
yeah. Almost makes me sad to go into the next silly question, but I am me. You said you were in a band.
I was.
That
yeah.
band. Now I know the truth. The Australian accent is not fooling me. The band was Nirvana.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you get mistaken for Dave Grohl? Has that ever happened? Like in real life, did someone think you were him?
Every single gig that I go to.
Yeah.
Uh, my friends are actually conditioned now. When the inevitable drunken buffoon comes up and says, "Hey, Dave Grohl," my friends kind of step in front of him and just put their fingers on their lips and shake their head. But I had this experience, the very first author photo that I had taken. I went with my buddy Chris. There's a alley in Melbourne. It's called AC/DC Lane. And there's a bar there called the Cherry Bar. It's this old rock and roll dive bar. And the walls are like plastered. It's one of the few places in Melbourne where bands can still post band posters. Um, and so I was having my first author shot taken against the wall of band posters. And this guy came up from the Cherry Bar carrying a load of empty bottles from the night before. And he kind of walked up and he walked past us and he double took me. And he saw a guy who looks like me and a guy with a camera. And little did I know that the Foo Fighters were touring Melbourne. And there was a ginormous Foo Fighters tour poster on the wall behind me. And so he thought I was Dave. He double took and he walked straight into the bins and dropped his empties and smashed them all over the ground. So yeah, it happens at every show that I've been to, which is weird because I have better tattoos and I'm 4 inches taller than him. But you know, insofar as celebrities you could be mistaken for, he's not a bad one. It could be Louis C.K. So, you know.
You ever fallen off a stage, broken your leg, and then continued the book signing?
No, hopefully not. We'd see what we can do tonight. Though. This is pretty, I reckon I could break a leg off here.
All right, more serious question. So you've talked about in the past kind of wrestling with and discovering your story. In fact, the story you just shared kind of talks about that. I always find this interesting because I'm a heavy outliner. I like a structure. I like to know where I'm going.
How heavy?
Usually I've got about 10,000 words per finished 100,000 before I start.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
But if it's a standalone, I'll have less because, I'll let myself discover more because I'm not going to throw things off for a 6-book series or something like that. But I do like to have a decent amount of structure. The thing with me is I can't do that for any of my characters. Because I feel like if I do too much outlining for character, then they come across as wooden. And so I often run into this where I don't feel like I'm discovering the story, but I'm writing along and I'm like, oh, I now know who this person is. They would not make the decisions
wouldn't
the
do the
outline
thing.
calls
Yeah.
for. What do I do? Well, I usually just go back and I have a huge outline to rebuild, right? But I do like to have that outline, and maybe it's a bit of a safety blanket. I know where I'm heading and things like that. But it has happened, but I've rarely had the experience you just talked about where the big twist comes to you. Like, the big twist is something that I've usually come up with years ahead of time before I'm writing the book. How does this work for you? Kind of the wrestle with a story. How do you balance, shooting for a goal with being able to throw everything out the window if something better comes along?
I mean, I have become much more of an outliner since I started working on Vampire. So the whole Nevernight trilogy, I pantsed it. You guys know the difference between a plotter and a pantser, right? You fly by the seat of the pants. You're making it up as you go. And I'm amazed that trilogy still holds together as a cohesive 3-act structure because I had no idea what was happening from day to day. But I was trying to do that on Vampire. Vampire was much more complex than anything that I'd written before. It's 3 different timelines. It's the meta structure, overarching twin timelines running in parallel, breaking back and forth, points of revelation being informed by the previous timeline. It was way more ambitious than
really
anything
cool.
that I'd done. Oh, thanks, man.
Mhm.
I'm just going to soak that in for a minute. All right, I'm cool. Yeah, but it was because it was more ambitious than anything that I had done. I found that I was wasting a lot of time driving into cul-de-sacs that ended up in going nowhere. And I was writing the twin storylines in parallel for a little while, but eventually I had to break into young Gabe because obviously he was going to be informed by the things that happened in his past. And that young Gabe part of the book had already blown up into like 400,000 words. And I had this kind of dark moment of the soul. I was living in Prague after the Dark Dawn tour, and I realized that the book wasn't doing what I needed it to do, that it still needed work, and I was going to blow my deadline. It was the first time I'd blown my deadline ever. I had to call my agent and say, listen, man, this book's going to be 6 months because it's just not working. And from that point on, I had to pull on my big boy pants and sit down and actually outline the book. And that was the first time I'd ever done it with my solo work. I had done it with my co-authored work because your co-author needs to know what is happening next. You know, if you kill this secondary character that I have some grand plan for, you've thrown the entire book into disarray. So weirdly enough, I had learned to be a plotter, even though I wasn't actively doing it in my solo work. So now I'm a bit of a hybrid. What I usually do is plot an act in advance, because like you said, a lot of the times, particularly kind of at the 2/3 marks of a new book, when you're just discovering who these characters are, I will do a breakdown of, you know, just biological traits and, you know, dark secret that they want no one else to know, what your greatest fear is, what your greatest desire is, what's the thing stopping you getting it, kind of bare bones structure of character. But I'm usually putting the meat on the bones of that skeleton in the act of writing the character themselves. And oftentimes, like you're saying, you reach a point where it feels like the character is rebelling against the plan that you've made for them because you know them better than you did when you started writing the plot. So what I've found is I usually plot about 10, 12 chapters in advance. And there's nothing better than waking up in the morning. I can't imagine what it's like for you, man. Like just waking up in the morning and knowing exactly what you need to do that day. Because it's such a rare feeling for me. Usually I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what the fuck happens next? But yeah, for this new project that I'm working on, I've been a lot more particular about the way I outlined it, but I still find that I want to leave the characters and the book room to surprise me and grow into their own shoes and exert their own willpower on the story. That to me is a sign that a character has really come to life in your head when they start doing and saying things. You sound like a crazy person when you talk like this because they're not real. They don't say anything. But when they start rebelling against the vision that you had for them and kind of carving their own path in your head, that to me is a sign that the character is working, that they've become real. So I always try and leave room for the characters and the book to surprise me as I go.
Yeah, I think one of the dirty secrets of writing, particularly those of us who are outliners, is all writing is secretly pantsing it, right?
Right.
Even if you have an outline, like you're pantsing between those points, and you're always debating if the points are going out the window. And sometimes they just need to. In fact, every book that I've written, major points have gone out the window.
Yeah.
But having that outline at least helps me keep a shape. And I do a lot of what, like, the more I've written, the less I've outlined my ending and my plot, and the
Yeah.
more I've done what you're doing. I say, all right, my next 5 chapters are this. I know the exact shape of them. I kind of know where I'm heading and what my initial idea for the ending is, but that is morphing. That's changing as I'm going through these early chapters.
Yeah, I like you were saying before, I usually have the big oh my god twist moment in my head. I usually can't even start writing the book until I know what the second act flip is. And I will have a rough idea of where the ending is going to take place. The analogy I use, it's like I'm driving in a car at night with the headlights turned off, and I can see a city lit up on the horizon. And if I keep the car vaguely pointed in the direction of those lights, I know I will get there. I'm not sure what roads I will take, and sometimes I might take a wrong turn. But as long as I keep aiming towards that light, then I will eventually arrive. But even when I was writing Dawn, I knew who was going to be on stage for the finale, but I had no idea what that finale was actually going to be. So it was really open-ended up until the final bell.
It is really fun sometimes for someone like me to write a standalone without that outline.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will do it just with almost no outline. If I know it's just going to be one book or a novella, because it sharpens that ability to improv as you go. And then the thing is, readers usually can't tell what was improv and what's not, because you have the revision process to make sure everything fits together.
Yeah, you
It's
look
just
like
whether
you meant it all along.
It's whether you do it up front or in post, it turns out the same.
One of the great tools I've found, this is going to sound a little bit silly, one of the great tools I've found for learning how to do that improv storytelling is running Dungeons and Dragons games. Because we have this saying, like, no plot survives contact with the players. You might have this elaborate structure put in place, and as soon as you put 5 neckbeards into a room with pizza on a Wednesday night. They just run away with the plot and do crazy shit. But you're the dungeon master. You can't just sit there stammering. You have to think on your feet and learn to improvise. So if you're thinking about writing fantasy, there are better things that you could do with your time than learning how to DM a D&D campaign.
I just did the very first one ever with my kids.
Oh, amazing. You ran it for them?
I ran it for them. Cool. My wife had never done a campaign before. My eldest had with his friends. My middle son is neuroatypical, ADHD and some things, and my youngest son is 12. And so we got together, and it was really a different experience where my middle son's like, I want to be this video game character that I'm, hyper fixated, special interested in right now. And everyone else is like, you can't do that. This is D&D. And I'm like, well, could we do that? And I said, what if we did that? And let him be that, and then kind of sculpted the campaign. So his favorite video game character came from, another world in. And that's the sort of thing, like, I'd been planning a campaign that did not involve video game characters. But by the end, everyone was totally on board with it.
Yeah, no plot survives contact with the players. Do you have like a massive D&D rig in your house that would make most mortal men envious?
I do have one of those really nice D&D tables.
The video screen?
It's not the video stream ones. I didn't get one of those on purpose. I got one of the ones that you take the top off and it has depth, so you can leave the miniatures there and then put the top on. And the bottom is a hex grid that you can draw on with wet erase markers. And so one of my children could be like sketching out the map for us as I'm describing it, and then you just put the top back on and leave it there. That's what we wanted. We wanted distance from screens when we're doing family D&D nights. So.
Yeah, we have a rule, no screens as well on Wednesday. It's all analog. It's pen and paper and dice. Yep.
Everybody had pen and paper and real dice, and they could bring their phones to turn on music. Thematic music was the use. All right, I got one last silly question for you, then we'll go to the audience. You made a giant miscalculation recently by posting Magic the Gathering content.
Oh, right.
And anyone who knows about me knows that I go, squirrel, Magic the Gathering. So you posted some Magic cards.
I did. They're probably busted.
They actually weren't too bad.
Yeah.
I thought they were pretty decent matches of the characters. Okay. What I wanted to ask, did you design those?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I am the nerd who is to nerds what nerds are to normal people. Like, I am the biggest geek on the planet, except maybe this guy sitting next to me, but yeah.
I will take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, we were just geeking about it, D&D in front of a live audience, so
we
sure.
were. So what I want you to do is, can you design yourself as a Magic card? Understanding most of the audience probably doesn't know Magic, but hopefully thematically you'll understand. What colors would you be as a Magic card? Yeah.
I wonder what color I would be. I'm going to go with black.
You're going to go with black, okay. Black is,
mono black.
Mono black, okay. Black in Magic is like the color of kind of both. Like all the colors in Magic have a good thing and a bad thing. It's independence, it's self-confidence, it's willingness to go and succeed, but it's also ruthlessness is kind of Black's thing. And necromancy and all that.
Necromancy and metal.
Yeah, metal. All right, what would your powers be? What would you do?
I mean, I'd be creature human.
Are we sure?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
creature human.
Yeah.
Probably like 1 colorless, 2 black.
Target reader breaks down crying.
No, I would have trample because I'm pretty tall.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe menace.
Yeah.
You need 2 guys to block me.
Yeah.
And
Trample, menace, reach. You're pretty tall. Yeah.
And my ability would be tap to destroy target horse.
Oh.
Those of you who know.
Because of the context of the stories that you write, what Google searches have put you on the watch list?
If I'm not on every watch list in Western civilization already, I'd be really worried about our security screening process. Some of the stuff that I look up recreationally should be worrisome enough. But when I was writing the Lifelike series, I was actually looking for abandoned nuclear missile, or the location of legitimate nuclear missile silos in the United States. So if I'm not on every watch list just for that alone, then your NSA is not earning their salaries.
Knowing how you do things, how do you balance making your readers love to hate you?
I mean, you're all a bunch of masochists. You pretend that you hate it, but you actually love it. Like when I do terrible things, you get more excited. It's not my fault, it's yours. You encourage me. How I do it, I don't know. I mean, one of the tools that I use early on to establish rapport is humor. If I'm going to embarrass my friend Jim here. I have a friend Jim. He's probably a 5 out of 10, and he married a 9. He married a 9 because he's funny. He can make anyone in the world laugh. He's hilarious. And I kind of used that as a track to affection pretty early. So Gabe, for example, he has a lot of Australian humor sensibilities. He's self-deprecating. He's pretty cynical. He has a bit of a heart of gold underneath it, but he has the ability to laugh at himself as well as other people. So that's one of the shortcuts that I use to affection. But yeah, you all pretend to be mad when I do the terrible thing. You're all going to be mad when you get to the end of book 3 or part 3, but come on, you know you love it. You wouldn't be here otherwise.
Somewhere, Jim is going to watch this and be like, hey, he thinks I'm
Yeah,
a 5.
Well, he's going to be, you think my wife's a 9? She's a 10, man.
Gabriel is both saint and sinner. What is something that you think readers might still misunderstand about him?
I mean, hopefully nothing by the end of the book. We get pretty far into his head in book 3. It's hard to talk about the thing without spoiling the book, and I don't want to do that for you. But hopefully you understand by the end of book 3, by the end of book 2 even, what the core of his character is. I wrote him as an anti-hero. The first scene that I ever wrote in Vampire is the scene. Has anyone here not read the first book in Empire of the Vampire? You? Get the heads. Cover your ears. No, this isn't going to be a spoiler, but it's the scene where he steals the horse, when he has to put justice down. Hashtag justice for justice. And he has to steal someone else's horse because he's being pursued by the wretched. And in the original version that I wrote, that was the first scene that I wrote. It was the first idea that I had for him as a character. I wanted to show that he was a desperate man in desperate times, and he will do terrible things to survive. But the original version of that scene that I wrote, he didn't steal the horse from the Inquisition soldiers. He stole it from a wife and a husband and 2 kids. He just ran up, took their horse and left them to die. And I realized that I wasn't writing an anti-hero. I was actually just writing a villain. So I had to dial that back. But he's a guy driven to terrible deeds by the terrible world that he lives in. But he's still fundamentally motivated by love of his friends and love of his family, even though he's been through some terrible things and doesn't have quite so many family members as he used to. Those are still the primary motivations for him as a character. But there is one thing that you have left to discover, and you'll discover it by the end of that book. And I hope you have fun doing it.
If your characters had a Smash Bros. Fight, who would win?
I get asked this question a lot. They wouldn't fight. They would get together and have a drink and then plot my death. Because I was very mean to both of them. I mean, if it came down to, it wouldn't be a fight. Mia would just poison Gabe. Like, she would just poison his wine, and he's a drunkard, so he would end up dead. But if he somehow got warned that that was coming, yeah, they got nothing to fight about. They might punch on for a little bit, like Avengers, and then once they wipe the blood off, they would realize the true enemy is me and come for me in the final act.
Your characters are fallible and human. Is that a conscious choice, or is it a part of the process of discovering the twists and things?
No, that's one of the things that I start with in that skeletal structure that I was talking to Brandon about. I kind of have, it's like a character bio. and it starts with simple name, height, weight, eye color stuff, but it drills reasonably heavy into the psychology of the characters. I do that with every character that I write. And I'm more interested in the things that they don't want people to know and the things that people won't like about them. I kind of start from the negative and then try and give the reader a reason to like this person, because we're all pretty deeply flawed at the end of the day. And I knew that Gabe was going to be primarily defined, at least at first, when we meet him as older Gabe in Vampire, by the terrible things that have happened to him. And he's kind of become a terrible person as a result. So I started from a place of, I started with the flaws and then tried to polish him up enough that he would still be tolerable on the page. So, I mean, there's a room full of people here, so I guess it worked.
How did you decide to include footnotes and illustrations?
Oh, what made you include footnotes and illustrations? I'm a wanker. I am a special snowflake, and I need my books to be special snowflakes too. So yeah, I'm always trying to do something a little bit different. The object of book hasn't changed a lot over the centuries. A book is still essentially a book, but I'm always interested in pushing the boundaries of what it can do. One of the coolest experiences I had early on, I was on a tram watching someone read the first Illuminae book. I'm not sure if you've read it, but there's a lot of experimental typography in that book. And there's one scene where a fighter pilot, he's zeroing in on his target, and the typography is written in a spiral, like a descending spiral around the page. And I was sitting on a tram watching this guy read Illuminae. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to look like a creeper, so I was watching him out of the corner of my eye. And he got to that point and he picked up the book and was like, and that was the greatest moment of my author career. So yeah, I'm always trying to do something kind of weird. I like the idea that reading my books is a little more interactive. So for the new one, I'm talking to Brandon about this before, I'm working on a new trilogy. We get to announce that next year. That was like one woo. But there's a form of chaos magic in that book. And whenever the chaos mages are on the page, they distort the page. They mess with the typography, and the things they do affect the way the typography is laid out in the book itself. And that's honestly just my precious little snowflake sensibilities coupled with my graphic design training. I try and make things a little bit different every time.
Have you thought about how you're going to do the audiobook for that?
Yes, and I have no good answer.
Yeah.
I mean, we did some pretty cool stuff with the Illuminae audiobooks. There were things that we did on a sonic sense that you can't do in a physical sense. So I imagine we will try and do something similar with the audiobook. My editor is going to watch this video and shit because he has no idea that any of this is coming. But yeah, we'll probably try and do something a little experimental with the soundscape as well. But there's some things that you just can't do.
Did you read Project Hail Mary?
No, I haven't
Okay,
yet.
the audiobook of that does some cool things.
Oh,
because
cool. All right.
I don't want to give you spoilers, but I read the book. I'm like, how are they going to do this in the audiobook? And they did some interesting things.
Oh, sick. All right, I'll check that out. Thanks, man.
Why don't you believe in happy endings?
So when I say I don't believe in happy endings, it's sort of a lie. Because no one wants to read a book where the villain is victorious, unless that's the point of the book. There is a pact struck between storyteller and reader, whereby you kind of know things are going to work out in the end. The interesting part of the book is the price that the heroes have to pay for the victory that they achieve. You kind of know that Gabe is going to get what he wants. It's just what he's left with when he gets it. So that's what I mean when I say I don't believe in happy endings. What I'm actually saying is that victory must come with a price, and it has to be a real and tangible one. It can't just be you lost one of the Dursley twins and your pet owl. That's not a price. Like you had to lose one of the Holy Trinity. Ooh, that was spicy. The thing that I used, the work that I used to illustrate this is the original Tridge, Star Wars. Like the end of Star Wars, Luke closes his eyes and he pulls the trigger and he blows up the Death Star and everyone goes home and gets a medal, except for Chewbacca, which is a fundamental injustice because he was the fucking co-pilot of the Millennium Falcon and worked just as hard as anyone. But Luke didn't really pay much. He lost his mentor, but you're supposed to lose your mentor. It's the hero's journey, classic structure. Like, he didn't really pay for that victory. But at the end of Empire, spoilers, by the way, he finds out that his father is Darth Vader.
What?
I did warn you. He gets his hand cut off, his best friend gets kidnapped, and the rebels lose. Like, the end of Empire Strikes Back is a defeat, but it makes the victory that they achieve in Jedi that much sweeter because they paid something real for it. Luke isn't the same guy that he was when he started that journey. It's the same as when Frodo returns to the Shire. He gives up his life in a very real sense to save Middle-earth because he can't ever go home again, because he's not the same person that left home. So even though no one, I mean, aside from Boromir, no one dies in the Fellowship, Frodo still pays a very real and tangible price. In a real sense, he loses the life that he had in order to achieve the victory. So that's what I mean when I say that I don't believe in happy endings. Victory must be purchased dearly, is what I'm actually saying. So yeah, I apologize for book 3 because they pay a lot.
Out of the 3 books written for the series, what would you say the hardest was to write?
I mean, like I said, this third book was a lot easier than any book that I've ever written before. But usually, I mean, you're probably the same. If you've done your job, the finale knows where it wants to go because it's following the tracks that you've laid down in the preceding books. Second in trilogy is usually the hardest. It's a difficult structure because it needs to be an entertaining story in and of itself, but it can't actually reach any real resolution because you've still got a third book to come. So usually where I end the second book is that second act, oh my God moment, the flip of perspective where you find out that the story you're being told is not actually the story that you're reading. But I don't know, what about you? Which is your most difficult?
It's different for every series.
Right,
And it's a tough call because there are books where I've really struggled on the first.
right.
That's the rarest, I would say. I'd say usually the first is the easiest for me. It's that exploration that I really love. And the first book when I'm writing a series usually is that sort of, here is a complete story, right? I try to do my trilogies as book 1, complete story. If you go into book 2, it's your fault. And
Yeah, you're gonna
therefore,
get a cliffhanger.
you know,
Yeah.
you might get a cliffhanger.
Sure.
And then from then on, you might get one. But I try to make that first one really satisfying. And so I would say it's usually book 2 or book 3. Occasionally it's been book 3. It's usually book 2.
Yeah, I'm the same. Book 2 is always the hardest for me. I mean, you look at the release schedule for this one, Dawn is, I think, 20% longer than Damned. And I wrote it in 18 months, and Damned took me like 2.5 years to write, just because it's the second book and it was harder. I rewrote the start of Damned probably 14 times before I found the right intro to that book. So yeah, maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I find the books the easiest. First books are usually the most fun because it's new, everyone is shiny, and you're on your first date, and you haven't figured out that she eats her toenails or whatever. Book 3 is usually, it's following up on all the work that you've done in the preceding 2, so by default, it's the trickiest. My wife does not eat her toenails, by the way.
Yeah, I was trying to find her out there. I'm like,
Just to
wait.
clarify.
What happened between Jay Kristoff and a horse?
You have seen the flip side of the tour just jacket, right? Yeah. I actually really like horses. I sometimes ride them for fun. They remind me a lot of dogs. So no, I have nothing against them in particular. It started with that first scene that I wrote. Like I said, I needed to show a desperate man in desperate times, and the horse seemed to be the easiest solution to it. And then, I don't know, they're big and they're fragile, and there's things that can punch holes in walls. And if the character riding it is important to the story and I need to show some sense of physical danger, then usually the horse is the easiest way to illustrate that. But there is a horse in Dawn that lives. I had one of my... I'm not going to tell you which one, but I had one of my best friends in the world is a writer named C.S. Pacat. She wrote the Captive Prince trilogy, and she's my writing bestie. We write together every week, and she loves horses. And so I made her name a horse in the book, so I knew I couldn't kill it. because if I did, she'd be furious with me. So I'm not going to tell you the name of the horse, but one of them actually makes it through.
What is the inspirational band for the Vampire Trilogy?
I mean, in terms of the music that I listen to when I'm writing, I don't actually listen to any of the bands that I normally listen to because the lyrics get in the way of my words. I listen to moody kind of atmo music. There's a track on YouTube. It's called Dark Cello Meditation Music. I've probably listened to it about 20,000 times now. I just play that in the background when I'm writing Empire. In terms of if I had to pick a song that summed up the series, it would be the one that I quoted at the start of Vampire. It'd be Walk With Me in Hell by Lamb of God. That kind of sums up the relationship between Gabe and Dior. And weirdly enough, was also a fan of the band, sent Randy, who's the lead singer of Lamb of God, a photo of that dedication at the front of the book. And he just messaged me out of the blue one day. I was walking down to get my morning coffee and I'm looking through my Instagram DMs and I saw D. Randall Blythe with a blue tick. And I'm like, no fucking way. Wrote it back and sure enough it was Randy. So he's emceeing my gig in Richmond, Virginia, like 5 nights from now. So if you thought I geeked out bad when Brandon sat next to me, wait until you see me with Randy from Lamb of God. It's gonna be crazy. But yeah, that would probably be the book that best sums up the relationship between Gabe and Dior.
Did you rip off Vampire Hunter D?
Was that a nice way of asking, did I rip off Vampire Hunter D? Because it kind of sounded like that. No, I've never watched it. I don't really like manga or anime that much. My wife loves it, but I'm not that into it. So no, if there's any similarities. What, is it like a talking sword or is it the guy with the eye in his palm? Yeah, right, okay. I know the visual, but no. In terms of finding out what Ash is and what her significance to the story is, yes, you find that out in Dawn. And I apologize in advance. Yeah, no, it's rough. But what was the second part of the question? Oh, how to do the sign of the wheel. It's kind of like the crucifix. You start at your brow, you draw a circle, come back to your brow. That's basically it.
So
Are you in cosplay? I don't have my glasses on. Are you just wearing a tricorn on a Tuesday night for the hell of it? You look awesome. Thanks, man.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing the YouTube comments because you have now insulted Chicago Pizza,
Yeah, I know.
Harry Potter, and all of anime and manga.
I didn't say it was bad. I just said I didn't watch it. That's all. No, I've tried to get into it and it's just not for me, and that's cool. If
Did
it's
you
for everyone
ever-
else, wonderful.
I hate to be one of those people who are like, oh, I hate this thing. Oh, really? But have you tried Cowboy Bebop?
The old 70s.
No, Cowboy
anime?
Bebop's 90s.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't.
It's a series of episodes all built around a different musical genre. And the
Okay.
music is really important to it. And it's about a group of bounty hunters in space. And every episode is named after a musical genre or themed after one. So
Oh, that sounds cool.
it is really cool. So
I used to watch, did you guys have Gatchaman here? It was called Battle of the Planets in Australia. Did you guys get Battle of the Planets? Everyone's looking at me, what the fuck?
no idea.
Gatchaman, it was like it was a team of teenagers and they were dressed like birds and they stood in a phoenix and spun in a tornado. No, you're all looking at me like, it was real, I swear.
So I'm not a big anime and manga person, but I'll watch what my friends say are the best, and Cowboy Bebop's the best.
Cowboy Bebop. All right, I will
Other
give it a
than,
try.
you know, like the Miyazaki stuff, which is amazing. Cowboy Bebop's the one that really worked for me. It's like
All right,
12
cool.
episodes, so.
I will check it out. Thanks, man.
How did you create the Bloodlines, and what was your favorite to write?
I mean, I started with kind of traditional vampire power sets and extrapolated on the mentality that would develop from having that particular power set. So the Voss, for example, they're impervious to physical harm. They're really, really hard to kill. And so Fabian and subsequently his children just developed this unearthly sense of patience. They know they're going to live forever. They know nothing can kill them. And if you annoy them and they don't get you today, that's okay. They'll get you 20 years from now when you don't expect it. They'll show up at your house and knock on your door 11 years after you've settled down and thought that you got away with it. So they were the line that I spent the most time with. And they were the line that I kind of explored that idea that I was talking about before, about the idea of forever is actually a terrible thing. It's a terrifying notion. So they're probably my favorite by default, just because I spent the most time with them. But you do get to meet the Elan in the third book. You haven't really spent much time with them at all, because it's a trilogy. It's only like 750,000 words. There's only so much space. But you get a little bit more time with them in the third book. And the goal was to have the mentality of the line reflect the power set that they contained. You know, if you have the ability to influence emotions versus the ability to punch down a castle wall, you're going to approach life very differently. So I wanted the persona of power to inform the mindset of the lines. But yeah, Voss is my favorite just because I spent the most time with them. And you get to meet all 7 of the Princes Forever by the third book. And they're all a lot of fun and terrible human beings. So I hope you enjoy them.
While working on books 2 and 3, do you wish you could change things in book 1?
Yeah, all the time. I had this amazing experience. I did a project for DC Comics last year. It was a 6-parter in the Elseworlds universe. I did Deathstroke as a Viking. It was a lot of fun, but it was a 6-shot series, and I had a month off between edits, and so I just sat down and wrote all 6 of them back to back to back to back. And I got to issue 5 and found myself sitting there thinking, man, if only I had seeded this idea back in issue 2. Oh wait, I can. And I went back and changed the script, and it was like the greatest day of my entire life, because I'm constantly thinking of things that I should have done and didn't in book 1. Like one of the major, it can be uncomfortable, and it forces you to think in different ways. And it can make the puzzle harder to solve, but sometimes when you solve it, it's extra rewarding. So I can't talk about it because of spoilers, but there's one such problem that I had to solve in book 3 that would have been made way easier if I had just done a little bit of heavy lifting in book 1. And because I didn't, I had to do a lot of heavy lifting in book 3, but it actually turned out really cool in the end. So sometimes the struggle can be worth it. But yeah, constantly, like, I'm not prescient enough to have like a 30-book series planned out in my head. I simply am not clever enough to contain that level of story.
Nobody is. You, right? Like, that's not. Yeah, I have the exact same experience.
Right.
Every time I'm writing a book, I'm like, oh, I could have done
only.
this. Oh, I could have done this.
Yeah.
The only one I didn't have that with was the original Mistborn trilogy, which I wrote straight through.
Yeah, right. Because you had
which
the
I did.
ability to go back and change. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the days when I would turn in a book and they would still wait 2 or 3 years to publish it.
Right.
Early in your career, they do that. Then you start making the money, and they're like, "Oh, we have a book. We're going to put
Chop,
that
chop,
out."
Sanderson.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What Magic the Gathering format do you play? And why is it Commander? And who is your commander?
Well done. Well done.
I actually don't play Commander. I play Standard.
Standard.
I play Standard.
Wow.
I'm
You still exist?
I'm a purist. No, the only place I can get a Standard game nowadays is online on Arena. I love Standard. I love Heads Up, and I consider that the purest form of the game. And so now I've pissed off Magic players as well. Sorry, guys. Making all the friends in Salt Lake City tonight.
They have Powered Cube on Arena now.
Yeah, I haven't been back to Arena since Brothers War. I think that was the last X-Pack I played. But no, you can't get a game of Standard in Melbourne. Can you get one here? It's just
It's
dead.
hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. I had this experience. I was away on a trip and decided that I was playing a lot on Arena online, and I decided I was going to play for real, because a lot of my best friends in the world are people that I met through geekdom, like D&D buddies and people I board game with. And so I thought I could meet a whole bunch of new people playing Magic. And so I built this mono blue deck. It was absolutely filthy. It was built around Haughty Djinn, which is an X4 flyer where X is the number of sorceries in your bin. And it was just all counter spells. So you would just sit there for 7 turns watching me bounce cards back into your hand or just pop them off the table. And then I'd hit you with like a 14/4 flyer, and you would just have no fun whatsoever. And it was great. So I built this deck, and I went to a store because it was the only place I could find in Melbourne that was running standard, and there was probably about 40 people in there. I'm like, oh wow, this scene is huge. And then I realized that 38 of those people were there to play Pokemon. And there was 2 sad dudes sitting down at the back of the store with the Magic standard players. And I played 3 games with them, and then I put the deck away and never went back. So yeah, I like standard, but it's hard to get a game IRL. But I have a bunch of buddies who play Commander, and they tell me that I should come down. It seems like a lot of fun and a lot more casual to collect, so maybe I'll get into it. Yeah, thumbs up? All right, I'll give it a try just for you, buddy.
Well, we are going to invite the bookstore to come up now and tell you how to do things. After that, I'm going to sneak away, or should I sneak away first? Let's end, and then we'll let you go. So
Can I just get 2 things? First of all, can we again give Brandon a huge round of applause for being with them? Thank you, man.
and a huge round of applause for Jay.